Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is August 30th, 2023, and I'm making a video to go through some of the list of the HoskSaid questions. I haven't had time to do an AMA in a little while, but a backlog is built up as a result. And so just to refresh your memory, there's a wonderful website run by somebody in the community, and it's called HoskSaid.com. And what it does is it takes all of the AMAs that I've done, and I suspect they'll even take this video, and they aggregate, and you can search and look for things like, for example, what did I say about Ouroboros? And then it'll say, oh, these are all the different YouTube links of things I've said about Ouroboros. And it takes these nice AI transcripts. So I asked the people who created the website to create a section where you guys can ask questions. And they're now aggregating here. There's a very long list of questions that are starting to aggregate. So let's just start here. And I looked through real quickly, and I just have a little bit of time. So I figured, why not actually start answering them? Okay. Is 45 billion the max supply a hat tip to Trump? No, that was derived before Trump ran for president, way back in the day. And it's just a coincidence that he's the 45th president. When a proof of work sidechain is bootstrapped, a set of nodes on the base layer, what role, if any, would stake delegators play in consensus? And so how we're imagining bootstrap to work with this, and let me go ahead and open up a screen to show you guys. So we're going to talk a lot about the partner chain, sidechain idea at the Cardano Summit, because the team is working real hard to try to pull a bunch of different threads and pieces together. But the long and the short is basically that you want a situation where ultimately the user is in control, the builder is in control about how they share consensus with Cardano. So you have the mainnet, and we generally call that SL if you refer to the Y Cardano document. And then you're going to have the partner chain or side chain. We also call this side chain. We have to come up with a common vocabulary, and the big marketing brains are working on that. And we typically call this CL, okay, it's for control layer, computation layer. But the basic idea is that the control function is Minotaur. This is a paper that we wrote about 2 years ago, and this is this idea of multi-resource consensus. Okay, and multi-resource consensus basically says, okay, well, this is proof of stake, and what you can do is run in a BFT mode by default. Okay, and that can come from the delegates, but you also could do stuff like proof of work, for example. So one of the things that we're exploring with Midnight for a long-term release of it is a proof of stake BFT mode with proof of work. And the proof of work being useful proof of work, and it's specifically related to the zero-knowledge infrastructure to accelerate it. So you actually get a proof acceleration layer inside the system. Well, the percentages of control between these two different sides, and Minotaur allows you to have multi-resource, so it's not just two, you can actually have multiple consensus algorithms that are chained together. The balance between these different things is completely up to the person who's launching the partner chain. So what's really elegant about this model is, unlike other sidechain systems where you're kind of captured and you belong to the main chain, you're subservient to it, you have a scenario where two different blockchains can kind of come together in a partnership. So let's say Cardano, for example, and Algorand over here. And what's going on in Algorand right now is they're trying to figure out how to build a proper incentives layer to get higher participation with their consensus algorithm, because they have this great BFT protocol that Silvio created, and it's a really phenomenal piece of academic work, but they kind of left the incentive side to be figured out. And so while you're doing that, what you could do is say, oh, okay, what we'll do is we'll just have a Cardano network be a backbone under Minotaur, and Algorand can take another side of it. So maybe it's a 50-50 split, and one side is compensated, the other side is uncompensated. And then we'll spend a year or two kind of figuring out the idealized staking model. And in the meantime, rewards get paid to ADA holders. And then once we figure out this whole model, we can just cut off the Cardano side and it can go its own direction. Solana, you could also put in there. And then the advantage is they get their high-speed proof of history on one side, and then they'd use Cardano to keep the network live so that they never actually have to reset the network. And so it would have never collapsed, and they'd still have a high-performance chain. While they're using Cardano resources, they have to pay for it, and that's paid for by sending the inflation, the block rewards over to the stake pool operators and the delegators on the ADA side. So if you had a proof of work style system that's a partner chain, you would have a reward function in your tokenomics, and that reward function is going to decide how much goes to proof of work and how much goes to proof of stake. Now, the answer, they say, well, what if there's no proof of stake at all? There's no BFT at all. Well, if that's the case, then 100% of the rewards are going here. In that case, this has actually become its own layer one, and it's running its own network. But because that basic infrastructure is there, you could conceivably roll it back through some form of a governance mechanism that's parameterizable by the users in the framework, and you could roll that back in a way that would allow you to go ahead and start paying some of that reward to other people. So these are the kinds of things we're thinking about and building in the partner chain framework for Cardano, and Midnight is really the first case study, but this is an example of where World Mobile can go. You can have stablecoin side chains. I know that SingularityNet really wants to do TOTA, and we actually recently wrote a paper on how to use proof of work to train a large language model. So there's a lot of stuff here that you can use, and I think it's going to build a very vibrant ecosystem. So what does that mean for the ADA holder? When I said Ethereum has a parasitic load problem where it's layer twos and its side chains, these things are taking transactions out of the main system and not benefiting the system. Here, if they're using Cardano infrastructure, they pay inflation, the Coinbase rewards. So that means if you're an ADA holder, you'd get, in addition to getting ADA, you'd get all the tokens that are under this arrangement in your staking rewards, because your stake pool operators, you and that partnership are maintaining the infrastructure there. And it's a lot more work for the stake pool operator because they have to run an Algorand node or a Solana node. So it's non-trivial, and there's a lot to sort out here. And there's a boatload of conversations we're having. But this whole story we're going to tell in the Cardano Summit and have lots of cool stuff about where it's going and the framework that we think is going to be awesome for the community, and kind of decide if they like it or not. That's the power of decentralized governance. Okay, so let's go switch back. And this great question is a misunderstanding of the notion of a security. Staking rewards do not mean it's a security, because the only way you get the reward is doing work. If you have a dividend on a bond or something, whether you're fishing in the lake or you're sitting there and helping people honor their commitment to pay you, that is completely immaterial to the fact that they have an obligation to pay you. No one in a properly designed proof of stake system gets a staking reward unless they've done some work for that reward. It's compensation for work. When you delegate to a stake pool, they're working with you in a partnership, but that stake pool still has to make blocks. And if they don't make blocks, they don't get paid. And the same is true with the partner chains. If they don't make blocks in the partner chains, there's no block rewards. So it's very important to understand that. Okay. Tell us about bison meat. What is the taste like? How do you cook it? What spices, sauces, if any? And if you make your own sauce, will you bottle and brand it soon? I am going to make a hot sauce over in Wheatland to create some jobs out there. We're going to call it Wheatland Widowmaker. The hottest peppers in the world. We can put all that synthetic biology and genetic engineering to use to do that. And I just like creating jobs in my backyard. But if you're really keen and interested in how to cook bison meat and how it's different from beef, there's a lovely video here. And this video is from Red Meat Lover. It's a great YouTube channel. He's got the American bison steak versus USDA prime beef steak taste off. Talks a little bit about these things, but there's a lot of people there floating around for this. Okay. As far as being a stake pool operator, is it possible for one stake pool to handle mainnet and also sidechain simultaneously? One SPO is a legal logical entity, yes, because what they'll do is containerize in practice, and each container will run the agents to do that. For additional detail, I see a lot of SPOs having more than one stake pool, pool 1, 2, 3. That's a different thing. My question focuses on one stake pool. So say pool 2, can pool 2 handle transactions? Yeah, they're going to have to run different infrastructures. So because there are different consensus algorithms and there's different logic there, they're actually running a full node on both sides. Could you update us on why JED was depegged and the value per coin was sometimes over $1.10 a month or so ago? And it's just market mechanics and the nature of these things. And so it's important to understand that all stable coins, whether they be asset backed or algorithmic, will not stay exactly at $1 if they're pegged to the dollar. Because what happens is somewhere in the market's perception, belief, or in the mechanics of trading, they can either be undervalued or overvalued. And what happens is that market participants show up and they trade the asset, and that'll either push the price up or down based upon whether that makes economic sense. So here's an example. Let's say you have a stable coin that's fully asset backed and you have redemption rights, and you notice a market anomaly where that stable coin is worth 90 cents. If you believe those redemption rights are solid, what you're going to do is buy that coin until you reach $1, and then you're going to redeem all those coins for actual dollars, and you're going to get 10 cents per coin. And so that'll push the price up. If it's $1.10, then what you're going to do is you're going to sell to anybody who's willing to get it, because you know that your redemption right is only $1 there. And so you have a 10 cent overvaluation. And so you want to divest that as quickly as you can. So this pushed the price up, pushed the price down. We have very similar mechanisms as well. It's just the redemption mechanics of that exist within the smart contract structure, and you usually have to introduce a new asset for it. JET is a living protocol. It still has everything you'd expect to see in a living protocol, meaning it's changing as you go. There's enormous amounts of economic data, and there's actually already plans with Cody to do JET up to version 1.7 to fully implement the extended JET protocol. And there's even something called the JET Alliance, and there's a lot of activity and things that people are thinking about in JET world. So it's a fast-growing project, and it kind of got mired a little bit because it was off in the corner, but it's now being brought into the forefront because algorithmic stablecoins are the only way to do asset-backed stablecoins where you have a volatile asset to try to create an asset that's not very volatile, and to do it with principles. Because if it's asset-backed, it will eventually be regulated in the traditional financial world, be a bank, and rightfully so, because they have bank risk in that structure. But the issue then is it's not crypto. It can't be crypto. Whereas if it's in the DeFi world and strictly Web3, it is crypto, but you have to work on the protocols. So depegging happens. It's happened in every algorithmic stablecoin. The question is, can it resolve itself? And you know what? I haven't checked it, but let's go real time and let's see where JED sits. Let's find out. There's always the danger of doing these things live. So we're at about $1.04. So it's returning to the peg. And then if you take a look at the all-time, kind of sits around $1, a little bit higher. Let's go down. And that just connects to the other things relative to the asset. But for the most part, it's staying within a reasonable band of about plus or minus 5 to 10% of the anticipated value. And the market cap is about 3.4 million, volume about 124,000. So it's not a very big project. And that's rightfully so, because the algorithm still has to mature and things have to go. And if you're really keen, go to the JET Alliance. And they actually are talking about various different ways to upgrade and grow JET, and Cody's JET, the Sigma USB, the Milkamada C1 implementation, and the various different contributors that work with it. And there's a lot of documentation here. And obviously we're working with Cody to figure out how to upgrade a few things. What tech will allow us to have fast transactions? The transaction is done within a few seconds instead of having to wait 20 seconds like the current block. That's called fast finality. And there's two routes you can get it. One is Hydra, and the other route is through a finality gadget. So currently our thinking is to solve finality gadgets in kind of three different levels. One is VRF improvements, should get it from where it sits today to about an hour. And that's like hour for no guarantee of no rollback, especially for side chains. But in practice, it's just a few minutes. You have enough finality. Then the next step is to implement an actual finality gadget in the system. That's a piggyback protocol that runs on Ouroboros. That's a post-Genesis work stream. It's called Ouroboros Paris, P-E-R-A-S. And that'll take you from about an hour to a magnitude of about 10 minutes. And then when input endorsers come, upgrade it one more time to get to about the minute range. And then what you do is you want sub-minute latency. You create smart contracts that provide instant finality, and somebody takes that finality risk for about a minute for a higher transaction fee. That's usually how you do it. You don't have to push the protocols too much. It's hard to get sub-minute latency on finality because there has to be coordination across the entire world, and your minimum 100 to 200 milliseconds on that. So, you're already 20% budget just for the coordination overhead with most distributed systems. So to get true finality, it's difficult. So minutes usually what you aim for. But does that impact like the cash register or these types of things? No, because you can just have those smart contracts that take that risk and they get you there. How is the Edinburgh Decentralization Index going, and do you really think it can become the standard measure of decentralization? We're pushing very aggressively and very hard for them to get that measurement of Bitcoin done, because that's the bellwether. And then what we're doing is talking to the European regulators, the UK regulators like the FCA, US regulators, the Middle Eastern regulators, and trying to get them to say, hey, this should become a component of a larger story and how they think about whether a cryptocurrency is sufficiently decentralized or not. So it's coming along quite well. And after Bitcoin, the very next measurement I'd love to see is Cardano and Ethereum, so that we actually have a comparative matrix and we can actually, for the first time ever, see where everybody falls. I'm very excited about that. My 96-year-old mother gets about 5 to 10 calls a day that are scams. Everyone's emails are full of spam. You talked once about how Cardano could solve identity on the internet. How would that work? Could Cardano solve the problem that my mom faces with spam callers? Absolutely. So if you have a DID-based identity, then you can have people sign. And what you can do for a 96-year-old mother is you can create a whitelist of people, and that can be managed by you, or it can be managed by somebody else, or by an entity you pay a subscription fee for. And only things that are signed by that whitelist are able to actually call her, and everything else gets auto-rejected. That's how you protect people who can't protect themselves. Children, very elderly people that would fail suitability guidelines, the mentally challenged. There's plenty of groups of people that they don't, for a context, have the full ability to understand whether the person they're talking to is real or legitimate. And you move from a blacklist to a whitelist. And then you just curate that list as a power of attorney, or a trusted authority, or these types of things, and help protect people. And that's very, very easy to implement with DIDs. By the way, there is a wonderful website I'm going to mention to you guys. It's called Do Not Pay. This is super cool. So I was at AI4. Let me bring this up. And AI4, the guy who started this is here. So it basically uses large language models, and you sign up and use AI. And what it does is it helps you fight corporations, cancel subscriptions, automatically cancel free trials. I mean, this is all the stuff it can do for you. And it's relatively cheap. I don't own anything or have any relationship with this company. I just thought it was one of the coolest things. So it turns out in the United States, robocalls, I think that's somewhere on their list. They got a big list here. Look at all this. Where's my robocall? Let's see here. Rental car upgrades, sex offender search, reducing property. Yeah, recalls. Here we go. Robocall compensation. So basically, in the United States, if a robocall calls you, you can sue them for $1,000. So they have one of the coolest services ever, where they can give you a fake credit card. If you get called by a robocall, you give them the fake credit card number, which then gets Do Not Pay, the address and contact information of the robocaller, and then they sue that person. There's a guy in New Jersey who's doing this for Do Not Pay. He's making $20,000 a month with it. But I just thought this is one of the coolest services. It's an example of where you can use AI to do these types of things. So there's services like this that are coming. Whitelisting is another example of a service. So some combination of AI and then whitelisting is the other, and then putting people in trusted authority would solve that for her. All right. What do the folks at Dubai think about the theme of the hackathon? It does not seem to me that they'd be interested in technologies of transparency. Does it to you? Actually, they are quite interested in transparency. They have too much money. You get very interested in transparency because you have trillions of dollars. And when you have trillions of dollars, you invest them. And if you don't have transparency, you get scammed. And they're having that same problem. So the Dubai government's been actually, frankly, more forward thinking about transparency and accountability than the US government is at the moment. Is the RISC-V ISA on IOG's radar? Yeah, RISC-V, for those of you who don't know, is an open source instruction set complementing CISC and the regular RISC, and basically they're trying to build open hardware. So Sci-Fi is one of the companies, and there's the RISC-V Alliance, and they're asking a question. Please go in as deep as you would like about the open source hardware ISAs. We are thinking about this for the optimal high security stake pool, where you have RISC-V, and then you compile a certified kernel like SEL4. Then you have a certified operating system like Mirage OS, and then you basically use that as a complete stack end to end on the software side to run a stake pool operator and get these things done. The other thing we've been looking at is actually how much would it cost for a person to be their own micro ISP. The United States is starting to open things up, get IXP level access. In Wyoming is only $5,000 a month. So it's pretty interesting. Maybe there's some subsidies and other things where people can get access and actually then control the network layer as well. And so network, hardware, software, complete open source, and everything is running on verified software, and it's all come together. All right. Thoughts on Nick Bostrom? That's Life 3.0. Not enough time for that. Why is the MBO called Intersect? Is it a meme? No, it's just the intersection of all the different interests of Cardano, the NFT and the DeFi and our interests and your interests all come together. They intersect. We talk about it and we come up with a conclusion for it. Any updates in the Wyoming stablecoin progress? We are making great progress there. The state's making great progress. They actually have public open meetings. The next one is, I believe, September 7th. If you guys want to see, I'll probably be up there in Wyoming. I don't know if they're holding it in Cheyenne or Laramie. But yeah, it's by law, they have to do it. It's just a question of how to get it done. And that's what we're talking about right now. Okay. Well, anyway, I have another meeting I could jump into, but I'm just trying to work my way through the HoskSaid list. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you have a question, ask HoskSaid. If this could be chopped up and the HoskSaid people can get the answers underneath the questions or something like that, that's a good interface. So maybe that's the next version of it. And they break the category to answered and unanswered, and I'll just keep chipping away at it. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.